We're joined by Kamal Nawash from Muslims Against Terrorism. Also with us is Alejandro Beutel from the Muslim Public Affairs Council, an agency that defends the civil rights of American Muslims. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for this debate or discussion. Let me ask the question of both of you. Is the FBI and federal law enforcement targeting Muslims? Mr. Beutel?
Absolutely. We do see that there is a trend, not just within within the FBI, but more generally within law enforcement. Since 9/11, this has been going on. We could start with NSEER's program, where over 5,000 Arab and Muslim individuals were deported, and yet none of them were even convicted on terrorism charges. In 2004, we could also talk about the radiation surveillance that was taking place at various mosques. These latest issues with informants seem to be the latest in a trend of ongoing issues. I might also add, though, at the same time, that while we are alarmed at the reports of this going on and that have been taking place for a while, we do think that it's important to engage law enforcement, because as individuals and as an organization that's committed to the safety and security of our country, we feel it's necessary to establish law enforcement partnerships, effective partnerships with law enforcement, but premised on respect for civil liberties.
All right, Mr. Nawash, do you think that this is a deliberate policy of targeting Muslims?
Probably not. I mean, whatever is happening, it's certainly not what's just been described by my colleague over here. You know, one of the things I noticed in this show is that they talked about the guy being an ex-convict. Well, it's routine for law enforcement in this country. I mean, I'm a lawyer. It's routine for them, whether someone is serving a long sentence and wants to reduce his sentence, so he goes and tells the FBI or vice versa, look, I'll help you catch some people. I know some things I can do if you reduce my sentence. They've been doing this for the last 100 years. So, okay, it may appear like there's a focus on Muslims, but that's kind of can be normal consequence even if they didn't target them. After September 11th, certainly there were many Muslims arrested, and many of them cooperated with the FBI and became informants themselves. I mean, this is a tool. The FBI used it against the mob in New York and in Chicago. So it's something that's happening, but it's not what he's describing.
But in this case, you've got what appear to be almost agents provocateurs in there trying to whip up some kind of action amongst people. There was a case in New York that was involved just really a bunch of petty criminals. Until the FBI informant got in there, they had no plans to commit any violence.
I think Kamal is right to say that informants have been used, and it is a vital tool within law enforcement. However, there have also been standards as to how to carefully use these tools. There are a number of different tools. Law enforcement is one of them. I might also add, though, that back in 2005, the Justice Department had an internal report by the Inspector General under even slightly higher standards than the low standards that are currently being implemented. And it found in the cases that are reviewed, 87% of the time, the FBI had violated even its own low standards for guidelines on FBI informants. This is something that we find to be extremely problematic and something that leads to an extremely ineffective, in addition to being contrary to civil liberties and American political values, but it's also a very ineffective counterterrorism policy.
But one thing you're not keeping in mind is usually the FBI doesn't control these people. These are almost like independent agents. Not really.
The informants have handlers. This is typical within
but they don't know what they're actually doing on a detailed basis. When someone comes to them who's been convicted of a crime, who's got a 10-year sentence and says, look, I can help you do this, just take 5 years off, he goes out in the community. They don't know what he's really doing. They might give him guidance, but he does his own thing.
They're going to have some sort of oversight.
Okay, but I mean, when he goes and tries to entrap people.
Both of these cases, though, they also
he was trying to build a case. He was just trying to get some goodies so he can get a benefit.
No, this is clearly a case where there's some sort of cherry picking.
Okay, let me put it this way. We got a new president. We got Obama. He's a big civil libertarian. Why aren't things changing?
That doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe he says it in rhetoric, but certainly not in practice, as we're seeing right now.
The point is that it's not a rule.
Regardless of even who's in power right now, we're going to continue to engage with law enforcement, and what we need to see is not just what they're saying in words, but what's also going in practice.
But no, my point is, why isn't it changing? Why didn't it change from the Bush administration? Why is it the same? I mean, tell me that. That's the whole point.
Because executive power many times can be a very seductive thing. And so that's why we have checks and balances within our society. To
that's one answer, but there are other answers. The fact is that maybe the administration is not interfering.
Heart of what our framers of the Constitution had even done.
No, but what is the appropriate level in the public interest of surveillance, of intelligence gathering, You mentioned this radiation screening at mosques.
Yeah.
Many people would argue that it's a very good idea to find out whether people are trying to do something with atomic weapons. So what's off limits and what's on limits? Should the agents go in and infiltrate mosques, or should mosques be off limits?
They should be able to do whatever a member of the public can do.
They should be based on factual predicate for any sort of criminal activity going on, because not only is it contrary to civil liberties, but it is also an ineffective and counterproductive policy.
But any citizen has a right to do so.
Any sort of law enforcement, including FBI, has limited resources as well. Looking at it just from a practical policy perspective, that this is a waste of resources. In addition to that, though,
no, but they
it undermines
the trust, not you.
It undermines the trust between law enforcement and Muslim communities.
Okay, it might
that are so critical
trust.
to getting information, so this way we can prevent terrorism.
Let's not all talk over one another.
No, listen. They may cause mistrust, but you're missing the entire premise here. Look. The point is they're not targeting. Your question is what can they do that? Where are the limits? They should be able to do whatever any member of the public can do. The fact is the things that they are doing now, any member of the public can do. They have a right to do that. They don't need a warrant to do any of the things they're doing because they're in public places.
But law enforcement is held to a higher standard than any member of the public.
Not necessarily. No. From a court's point of view, for you to allege, for example, that they violated the Fourth Amendment, that they needed a warrant for something, they look at what does a member of the public can do. If they were in a place that any member of the public can be, they'll allow it. So the point is, I mean, they have to investigate, and these are the tools. I'm not saying it's not causing a rift. All I'm saying is let's just recognize it may not be a concerted effort by the administration. This is a process, a law enforcement process, and it's been going on for 100 years, and that's the point.
Mr. Beutel, last word. Make it a quick one, please.
It's been going on for 100 years, but it's also been done in a much more efficient and respectful manner to civil liberties, and might I add, it has been very, very effective at bringing down terrorists to justice, making our nation safe and secure while upholding the principles of liberty and justice for all.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. That's Kamal Nawash of Muslims Against Terrorism and Alejandro Beutel from the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Thanks again.
Thank you.